Hey guys, welcome back to the Pokemon Go vlogs with Electric Avenue. And today's video, we have just got the update on Team Go Rocket Leaders and Giovanni. Team Go Rocket Takeover is happening right now, today, and it's already started around the world for some other areas. But for today, I want to discuss on how you can defeat each of the team leaders and Giovanni. The grunts are an easy win, but the team leaders are completely different. But with this video and my guidance, I can help you defeat the team leaders very easily. And if you haven't checked out my previous video yet, I'm going to use some similar methods that I did from the last time that I explained how to defeat each of the Team Go Rocket grunts. A synopsis: basically find a common weakness for each of the slots, which of course being slots 2 and 3 for the team leaders. So make sure that you give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to comment down below if you find this information very helpful. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to click on the notification bell and share this video with your friends who are also struggling in facing off against the team leaders. Without further ado, let's get on to the video. So to start off, I figured we'd go off into Arlo first. So in his first slot, he's gonna have a male Nidoran, which of course this Nidoran can also be shiny when encountered, if you're lucky of course. For a Nidoran weakness, you're going to need either a Psychic type or a Ground type Pokemon to defeat the Nidoran first. After you defeat Nidoran, you'll head off into his second slot. His second slot will include either Crobat, Steelix, or Cradily. A Crobat's weakness is Psychic, Rock, Ice, and Electric attacks, while a Steelix weakness is Ground, Fighting, Water, and Fire attacks, and a Cradily weakness is Steel, Bug, Fighting, and Ice. So far, Crobat and Cradily share a common weakness to Ice-type attacks, as Steelix and Cradily also share a weakness to Fighting attacks. So unfortunately, there's no common weakness for all three of them. So the best common option would be to have your lead Pokemon be a Psychic type, and in case he has a Crobat, keep it at a Psychic type, and for his second slot, probably have a Fighting type on you, since of course Steelix and Cradily share the common Fighting type weakness. After his second slot, you move into his third slot, his final slot, which of course contains Scizor, Charizard, and Armaldo. He's most likely going to send out Scizor for his last Pokemon, so always bring a Fire type with you just in case, because Scizor's weakness is only to Fire type attacks. Charizard's weaknesses include Electric, Rock, and Water attacks, and Armaldo's weaknesses include Rock, Water, and Steel. So in the likelihood you either run into Charizard or Armaldo, I'd recommend either having a Rock type Pokemon or a Water type Pokemon, because that's a common weakness that those two actually share. So that's one way of having to try to defeat Arlo in Pokemon Go for this Team Go Rocket Takeover update. Now let's move on to Cliff. For Cliff's first lead Pokemon, he's gonna have a Magnemite. Magnemite's weaknesses will include Fire, Ground, and Fighting. So for a lead, I recommend either taking one of those. And if you're lucky, after you defeat Cliff, you might even encounter Shiny Magnemite as well. Slot 2 contains Venusaur, Omastar, and Pinsir. Venusaur's weaknesses include Psychic, Fire, Flying, and Ice attacks. Omastar's weaknesses include Fighting, Electric, Ground, and Grass attacks. And Pinsir's weaknesses include Rock, Fire, and Flying. And Pinsir's weaknesses include Rock, Fire, and Flying. Now, not all three of them do share a weakness. Venusaur and Pinsir share a same weakness to Flying and Fire attacks, and Omastar doesn't even share any weaknesses with any of the other two at all. So my best bet, probably bring a Fire and Flying type. You could also use a Fighting type as a lead to defeat Magnemite, and then keep the Fighting type on you just in case he uses Omastar in his second slot. That's a helpful tip right there. His third slot and his final slot will include either Tyranitar, Sharpedo, and Camerupt. You'll most likely encounter Tyranitar. So Tyranitar's weaknesses do include Fighting, Water, Grass, Bug, Steel, Ground, and Fairy, while Sharpedo's weaknesses also include Fighting, Bug, Grass, Fairy, and Electric. And while Camerupt's weaknesses include Water and Ground. Again, not all three share a common weakness. Tyranitar and Sharpedo share Fighting and Fairy type as a weakness. They also share grass as a weakness as well. Tyranitar and Camerupt share a weakness to water and ground attacks. And Sharpedo and Camerupt, well, they don't share a common weakness. Mostly because Sharpedo is just a water type and ground types won't do that much to Sharpedo. Same with water types. But I actually would recommend just bringing a fighting type since Cliff is probably going to bring out Tyranitar as his final. Lastly, let's move on to Sierra. Now Sierra is pretty easier than like Cliff and Arlo. Well, from before this takeover at least. So let's talk about what Sierra has in her lead lineup. Her first lead is going to be Beldum. Beldum's weaknesses include dark, ground, fire, and ghost attacks. And of course, this is the first time that Shadow Beldum is going to be making a return, which means we'll have a chance of getting Shiny Beldum as his shadow after defeating Sierra. Now we move on to slot number 2. Her second slot will include Sharpedo, Lapras, and Flygon. As we know, Sharpedo's weaknesses include fighting, bug, grass, fairy, and electric attacks. Lapras' weaknesses include fighting, rock, electric, and grass. And Flygon's weaknesses will include ice, dragon, and fairy attacks. So for Sharpedo and Lapras, these two actually do share some common types. Both are weak to fighting, both are weak to electric, and both are weak to grass. Flygon, however, does not share any of the weaknesses with these Pokemon, except for Sharpedo, which Sharpedo actually is also weak to fairy-based attacks. Unfortunately, you can't use your lead Pokemon from before to take out the second slot, because, you know, they don't all share common weaknesses with each other. But of course, as long as you have something good in your second slot, you'll be fine. Now let's move on to her final slot next. Her last slot will contain Houndoom, Shiftry, and Alakazam. Houndoom is most likely what you'll encounter, and Houndoom's weaknesses will include water, ground, rock, and fighting, while Shiftry weaknesses will include bug, fighting, fire, flying, poison, fairy, and ice attacks. And Alakazam's weaknesses will include bug, ghost, and dark. So Houndoom and Shiftry share a weakness to fighting attacks, since both of them, of course, are part dark types. Shiftry also contains a weakness to bug, as well as Alakazam does. So yeah, that's like a hard one, but I recommend always to bring like a fighting type in case you do encounter Houndoom, since Houndoom, of course, is the most common one that she will send out. And if you had checked out my previous video as well, don't forget about the rock, paper, scissors method of Scizor, Tyranitar, and Houndoom, where Scizor beats Tyranitar, Tyranitar beats Houndoom, and Houndoom beats Scizor. So yeah, that's a good way to defeat some of these team leaders in Pokemon Go. Now, let's move on to Giovanni, the boss of Team Go Rocket. As we all know, for Giovanni, his first slot is going to contain Persian. So for your lead Pokemon, I recommend bringing a fighting type with you. His second slot is going to contain either a Garchomp, a Nidoking, or a Cloyster. Garchomp's weaknesses include Ice, Dragon, and Fairy type attacks. Nidoking's weaknesses include Ground, Psychic, Water, and Ice. And a Cloyster's weakness will include Fighting, Electric, Rock, and Grass attacks. I'd recommend taking an Ice type since you'll probably have a higher chance of encountering either Garchomp or Nidoking. You might also have a good chance of encountering Cloyster. Garchomp and Nidoking share Ice type as their weakness. So that's why I say bring an Ice type Pokemon with you. And if one of your Ice types knows like a Fighting, Electric, Rock, or Grass attack, you could bring that as well to take out a Cloyster. Lastly, we move on to legendary Pokemon of Giovanni, which of course being Registeel. And the way to deal with Registeel is that you need to have some fire, fighting, and ground type attacks on it. I hope you find these tips pretty helpful for today. And if you follow these tips, you'll have a good easy winning on defeating the team leaders and of course defeating Giovanni probably in one run. At least that's how I would view of it. But yeah, that's a good way to taking out the team leaders and Giovanni. Hope you guys enjoyed this video for today. I'm going to be working on making more videos in the near future as well. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Goodbye, everybody.